creepy. It's just such a fetishistic event. That word, fetishistic, coming from one of the most powerful men in Hollywood. Let that sit for a second. KSI. Come on, KSI told us. He's uncomfortable, guarded, like a man who knows exactly what goes on behind closed doors, and has spent decades trying to keep his distance from it. But here's what nobody is connecting. Because while the world was busy asking why Keanu Reeves refuses to touch people at photo ops, why he rides the subway instead of private jets, why he donates anonymously, why he warned crowds about what was coming, the real question was always this. Let's start with what we actually know about Keanu Reeves. Because the picture the mainstream media painted of him was always incomplete. Yes, he's generous. Yes, he's humble. Yes, he's universally beloved. But those qualities didn't come from nowhere. They came from contrast, from watching what the people around him were doing and making a conscious, deliberate, almost desperate choice to be nothing like them. Think about it. This is a man who has been inside the highest levels of Hollywood since the late 1980s. The Matrix, Speed, John Wick. He's not a newcomer. He's not a tourist. He has been in those rooms, at those parties, surrounded by those people for over 3 decades. And what has he said about it? Hollywood has become a breeding ground for some seriously dark stuff. Child trafficking, pedophilia, and prostitution. He didn't say this casually. He didn't mumble it in a throwaway interview. He said it during a congregation talk. He named it specifically. Child trafficking, pedophilia, prostitution. 3 words that, when placed next to one name, Jeffrey Epstein, paint a picture so dark, so disturbing, that most media outlets simply refuse to connect the dots. But we're connecting them today, because here's what the gossip blogs won't tell you. Keanu Reeves has spent the better part of his Hollywood career doing something extraordinarily unusual for someone of his status. He has been actively, publicly, loudly distancing himself from the very people who frequented Jeffrey Epstein's inner circle. And that is not a coincidence. Let's rewind. Jeffrey Epstein, financier, convicted sex offender, and alleged trafficker, ran a network that funneled some of the world's most powerful men to a private island in the US Virgin Islands, Little St. James. What happened on that island to the children brought there has been described by survivors as systematic, organized and protected by layers of wealth, influence, and silence. Now, was Jeffrey Epstein connected to Hollywood? The answer, backed by flight logs, court documents, and testimony, is yes. His client list reads like a who's who of entertainment, finance, and politics. And while the full list has never been officially released, with court battles still ongoing, what has come out is enough to turn your stomach. And Keanu Reeves, he saw it coming years before the rest of the world woke up. He was already warning people, already naming it, in rooms full of people who either didn't want to hear it or already knew. Now, let's talk about what allegedly happened on that island. Because the picture that has emerged from survivor testimony, investigative journalism, and leaked documents is nothing short of horrifying. Epstein's Island wasn't just a party destination. It was, according to multiple sources and ongoing legal proceedings, a place where young people, some of them children, were trafficked, exploited, and abused by powerful men who believed themselves to be completely untouchable. The mechanism was deceptively simple. Epstein offered access to money, to power, to influence, And in return, those who accepted that access became compromised, bound by their own participation in what happened there. But he refuses, absolutely refuses, to put his name on the foundation publicly. In an industry where philanthropy is currency, where charity galas are networking events, where giving is performance, Keanu deliberately stays invisible. Why? He's protecting himself. But more importantly, he may be protecting the children he supports from being used as props in a world where powerful men use proximity to vulnerable people as leverage. He's seen what happens when Hollywood gets its hands on something pure. He's watched it get twisted. Now, consider this, and this is the part that should genuinely disturb you. Multiple survivors of Epstein's network have described a specific practice that went far beyond trafficking and abuse. They have described a culture in which the youth, the vitality, the essence of the children being exploited, was viewed by the men involved as something to be consumed, literally and figuratively. There are accounts, disturbing, difficult to hear, describing rituals, describing the use of young blood, describing practices that sound more like something from a horror film than from a Caribbean island. And Keanu Reeves, years before any of this became mainstream news, called it out by name. He didn't whisper it. He said it out loud, blood-drinking elites, in Hollywood. And at the time, most people laughed it off as conspiracy theory nonsense from an actor who'd spent too much time playing Neo. But now, Epstein's Island is a matter of court record. Now, survivor testimony describes practices that align almost exactly with what Keanu was describing. Now, the question isn't whether these things happened. The question is, who was there? Let's go back to something that gets overlooked in every feel-good Keanu story. This man has suffered enormously. His best friend, River Phoenix, died of a drug overdose at 23. His daughter was stillborn. His girlfriend, Jennifer Syme, died in a car accident. Grief upon grief upon grief. And through all of it, he stayed in Hollywood. But he never let Hollywood in. Now ask yourself, what kind of thing would you have to see? What kind of knowledge would you have to carry to choose solitude over the greatest social playground on earth? To ride the subway when you could have a motorcade? To eat alone when you could have a table at any restaurant in Los Angeles? Keanu Reeves chose isolation not because he doesn't like people. He chose it because he knows people. He knows what the people at the top of this industry are capable of. He has been in those circles long enough to understand that proximity to power in Hollywood is proximity to darkness, and that the price of staying close to the flame is eventually getting burned. And then there's the story that really pulls everything into focus. In July 2022, Keanu was spotted at an airport interacting with a young boy, patiently, kindly, genuinely. A TV producer who witnessed the encounter posted about it online. And the world gushed. Another wholesome Keanu moment. Another proof of his good character. But read that story differently. In a world where children were being trafficked to private islands. In a world where the men Keanu shared red carpets with were allegedly paying to abuse minors. This man sat down with a child at an airport and gave him his full, undivided, respectful attention. That is not an accident. That is a man who has made a choice, maybe the most important choice of his life, about what kind of human being he intends to be in an industry full of men who made the opposite choice. Now, let's talk about the Matrix. During contract negotiations For The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions, budget cuts threatened to push young, lower-paid actors off the project. Keanu Reeves voluntarily cut his own salary to keep them on. He then gifted Harley-Davidson motorcycles to 12 stunt crew members out of his own pocket. In the context of everything we've just discussed, this looks completely different, doesn't it? He was protecting people, not just financially. Symbolically saying, loudly, to everyone in that industry watching, I see you. I see what you do to people, and I'm going to be different. And that's the thing about Keanu Reeves that the mainstream narrative always misses. Every generous act, every moment of humility, every refusal to play the Hollywood game. It isn't just kindness, it is resistance. It is a man who knows exactly how dark the room gets when the cameras turn off, and who has spent 30+ years refusing to turn his own lights off. Keanu isn't alone in this. And this is important, because if you think one man whispering about blood-drinking elites and child is just one man's opinion, consider who else has been saying the same things. Mel Gibson, a man who has been publicly radioactive for years. Not just because of his personal failures, but because of the specific things he has said about Hollywood's elite and their relationship with children. Mark Wahlberg, who has spoken openly about darkness in the industry. The punishment for speaking the truth in Hollywood is swift and merciless. And yet, Keanu keeps speaking. Carefully, strategically, in ways designed to be heard without being silenced. He doesn't go on podcasts and rant. He drops breadcrumbs. He makes statements that, taken individually, sound like philosophy. But taken together, tell a very specific story. The story of an industry where powerful men flew to a private island and did unspeakable. And voices like Keanu's, once dismissed as paranoid, eccentric, or just quirky, are starting to sound less like conspiracy and more like testimony. So the question isn't whether Keanu Reeves knows what happened on that island. The question is, who else does? And when does the full list come out? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Who do you think is next to be exposed? And if this video opened your eyes, hit subscribe, because we are just getting started.